Imagine you break your arm. You go to the hospital, and the doctor puts you right in front of an X-ray machine.
Yeah, you're just sitting there waiting for the result.
Right. The image comes back, and there's just this jagged white line across the bone. The doctor points to the screen and gives you a diagnosis. It's either broken or it's not broken. I mean, it's a clean, binary reality.
Very black and white.
It is. You can see it, you can categorize it, and in a strange way, it brings you a sense of comfort because it's so precise. Well, welcome to Reformed Thinking. Our goal for this deep dive is to look at a diagnosis that is not physical, but spiritual.
Which is usually where things get a lot less comfortable for people.
Oh, absolutely. Because when you step into the world of ancient languages and the theological diagnostic manuals of the early church, that clean X-ray machine just shatters. The diagnostic landscape becomes much more severe.
Yeah, it does.
We have a massive stack of lexical sources today, including Greek dictionaries, ancient historical texts, and theological commentaries. And we are going to unpack a single, highly specific ancient Greek word for you today.
Just one word.
Just one word. The word is alazon, along with its related noun form, alazoneia. Now, if you open up a standard English translation of the biblical text we are looking at today, you will usually see this word rendered simply as boaster or braggart.
Right, which is a translation that honestly severely undersells the sheer gravity of what the ancient writers were trying to communicate.
How so?
Well, when modern people hear the word braggart, we think of a minor social annoyance. We think of the guy at the neighborhood barbecue who will not stop talking about his golf handicap.
Right, or like the person at the office who manages to steer every single conversation back to their recent vacation to Italy.
Yeah, sure. It sounds like a personality flaw. It just sounds like someone who lacks a bit of self-awareness.
It feels harmless. Annoying, sure, but entirely harmless in the grand scheme of things.
But as we look at the historical and theological sources you have synthesized for us, we see a diagnosis of the human condition that goes far beyond just a lack of social grace.
It's way deeper than that.
Right. The central thesis drawn from these commentaries and dictionaries is honestly striking. The concept of the alazon is not about someone talking too much at a party. It is a precise diagnosis of a creature in active rebellion against divine authority.
Wait, rebellion?
Yeah. It describes someone who is attempting to claim total sovereignty over their own life, their own future, and their own existence.
That is the core of the issue right there. The dictionaries reveal that the alazon is a person who fundamentally refuses to acknowledge their status as a created being.
They are attempting to usurp the throne of reality, basically, and place themselves upon it.
That is a massive conceptual leap. I mean, going from the annoying guy at a party to a creature in active cosmic rebellion against the sovereign creator requires some serious explanation.
It's a huge jump.
But I know we cannot just jump straight into the heavy theological conclusions. The sources indicate that this word had a very colorful history before it ever entered the pages of Scripture.
It really did.
So, to grasp the theological weight, we need to understand the street-level origins first. Where does this word alazon actually come from in the classical Greek world?
The etymological root of the word is quite fascinating. The term alazon is derived from the Greek word ala, which literally translates to vagrancy or wandering.
Wandering, okay.
Yeah, so originally the term was used to describe a vagabond. It's a descriptive noun for someone without a permanent home, someone who drifted from place to place.
Let me stop you there because we need to translate that ancient reality into something a modern listener can grasp. Today, being a wanderer or like a digital nomad is almost romanticized.
Oh, totally.
People buy a van, put a Wi-Fi router on the roof, and travel the country. It's seen as a lifestyle choice. But I am guessing in the ancient Mediterranean world, being a vagabond carried a very different social stigma.
A completely different stigma. I mean, in the ancient world, society was hyper-localized and built entirely on agrarian and communal stability. People lived and died in the exact towns where they were born.
So everybody knew everybody.
Right. Your reputation preceded you, and it outlasted you. Everyone in your village knew your family lineage, they knew your trade, they knew your character, and they knew your economic standing.
It's like living in a small town today, but dialed up to 100.
Yes, society functioned on a strict social contract of trust and verification. If you claimed you were a skilled carpenter, the village knew whether that was true because they could literally look at the chairs in their own homes.
So the community itself acted as an automatic fact-checking system. You could not invent a false persona because everyone had known you since you were a child.
Precisely. But a vagabond, the alo, had no local ties. They existed completely outside that localized social contract of trust and verification.
They were off the grid, essentially.
Exactly. Well, yeah, they were a blank slate. When a wanderer walked into a village, they had no references, no family to vouch for them, and no history that the locals could verify.
Because they had no roots. They had zero accountability to the community.
Yes, and that lack of accountability created an opportunity for deception. The linguistic evolution of the word is a direct result of that sociological reality.
That shit shifted meaning.
It did. The word morphed from simply meaning wanderer into describing a false pretender, an imposter, or a quack.
Because they could just make things up.
Right, because these individuals moved constantly from town to town, they could arrive in a new place, make absolutely wild, unsubstantiated claims about themselves, their skills, or the wares they were selling, and then quickly leave town before the locals realized they had been duped.
I want to make sure I am grasping the mechanics of this deception. Let me offer an analogy to anchor this concept for you. This is not just someone telling a tall tale around a campfire.
No, it's way more calculated.
The ancient Alazōn is the equivalent of a modern, fraudulent startup founder. Think of a charismatic CEO who stands on a stage and makes completely fabricated claims about a revolutionary new medical technology just to secure hundreds of millions in venture capital funding.
Oh, that's a brilliant comparison.
They know the technology does not exist. They know the blood testing machines do not work. But they sell the illusion with absolute confidence, take the investor's money, and hope to cash out before the reality is discovered. They are monetizing a fabricated reality.
That is a spot on modern parallel. The Alazōn is selling vaporware. They are extracting value from a community based on a completely artificial premise.
It's a con.
It's a con. And what is compelling about your analogy is that it highlights the psychological element of the con. The classical Greek philosophers actually spent a great deal of time analyzing this specific psychological profile.
Really? They categorized it.
They categorized this behavior with incredible precision.
The sources specifically mention Aristotle's take on this. I imagine someone as analytical as Aristotle had a field day dissecting the mechanics of a con artist.
He certainly did. In his Nicomachean Ethics, specifically around section 1127b, Aristotle dissects this exact personality type.
What did he find?
He notes that an alazon is someone who claims more and better things than he has, or even what he does not possess at all. He defines it as a failure of truthfulness regarding one's own life and possessions.
So they're padding their resume.
To an extreme degree. They ascribe to themselves wealth, status, or capabilities that are entirely fictional. They promise what they cannot perform.
I want to push back on that definition for a moment. What if the person actually believes their own hype?
What do you mean?
Like, is it still alazoneia if the startup founder genuinely, delusionally thinks his impossible software will magically work next year? There is a difference between someone who is mentally unwell and someone who is running a scam.
Aristotle actually addresses that distinction, which we see cited in the theological dictionaries we were reviewing today.
Oh, he does?
Yeah, Aristotle argues that the core issue is not in the person's actual ability or their power. The defining characteristic of the alazon is their deliberate choice to deceive.
Deliberate choice.
Aristotle uses the Greek word proairesis, which refers to deliberate choice, purpose, or moral volition.
So it is a calculated act of the will.
Yes. The alazon has a fully functioning intellect. They are not suffering from a delusion. They know the objective truth about their own limitations, but they willfully choose to project a false reality in order to gain a social or financial advantage.
The malice is in the calculation.
The malice is entirely in the calculation.
Theophrastus has a perspective on this as well, according to our stack of sources. He wrote a famous work called Characters, which is basically an ancient catalog of personality types and social vices.
Theophrastus offers a definition that is incredibly sharp. He defines alazoneia as the arousing of the expectation of certain goods which are not, in fact, there.
Arousing the expectation of goods which are not, in fact, there. That is a devastating definition of false advertising.
It really is.
You are painting a picture of a lavish feast, charging admission at the door, and then directing people into a room with an empty plate. And according to the historical notes, this specific type of fraud became a massive trope in Greco-Roman entertainment.
It did. The dictionaries point out that the alazon became a staple character in the comedies of Plautus.
The playwright.
Yeah, specifically they point to the archetype of the miles gloriosus, which translates to the swaggering soldier.
Explain how that character functioned on the stage. Why did audiences find that specific persona so entertaining?
The theatrical function of the comedy was to expose societal absurdities. The swaggering soldier was a comedic character who would strut across the stage in magnificent armor,
Looking the part.
looking the part perfectly. He would loudly recount his fabricated military triumphs, claiming to have defeated entire armies single-handedly and boasting of his unmatched bravery in the face of death.
But the audience knew better.
Exactly. I mean, the comedy worked because of dramatic irony. The audience knew the objective truth. The soldier was an absolute coward who would run away at the first sign of actual danger.
The humor is located in the massive chasm between the character's bombastic claims and his pathetic reality.
Yeah, that gap is where the comedy lives, and the sources list other professions that frequently earned this title in ancient literature. It was not just soldiers.
Who else?
The label was applied to magicians, traveling orators, philosophers, doctors, and even cooks.
Cooks?
Yeah, anyone who laid claim to a level of intelligence, skill, or status that they simply did not possess was branded an alazon.
So if we synthesize this classical street-level view, we are looking at a well-defined social vice. It describes an annoying, deceitful habit. A con artist, a braggart, a fraud.
It's all horizontal deception.
Right. Horizontal deception, meaning it is a person lying to other people. But this brings us to a massive pivot point in our sources, and frankly, a mystery that needs to be solved.
Okay, lay it out.
How does this street-level hustler, this comedic stage character, graduate into a target of divine judgment in the biblical texts?
It's a big shift.
Because a guy lying about his military record is pathetic, but he is not necessarily a cosmic threat. Something must have happened to this word when it crossed the cultural boundary into Jewish theology.
That is the pivotal shift. And to understand the mechanics of that shift, we have to look at the translation of the Septuagint.
For you listening, the Septuagint, often referred to by the Roman numerals LXX, is the ancient Greek translation of the Hebrew Old Testament. It was translated by Jewish scholars in Alexandria a few centuries before the time of Christ.
That's correct. When these Jewish scholars took on the monumental task of translating ancient Hebrew thought into the Greek language, they had to find Greek words that could hold the massive weight of Hebrew theology.
Which isn't always a one-to-one mapping.
It's rarely one-to-one. They adopted the specific word, alazon, but they fundamentally altered its trajectory.
How so?
In the Septuagint, particularly in the wisdom literature and historical texts like Proverbs, Job, Habakkuk, the Wisdom of Solomon, and the books of Maccabees, alazoneia ceases to be a mere social annoyance.
It levels up.
It becomes a diagnostic marker of a severely fractured relationship with the divine.
How does that linguistic mapping work? I mean, why did they choose a word associated with street hustlers to describe a fractured relationship with God? What is the conceptual bridge?
The bridge is the concept of boundaries. In Greek thought, the word became inextricably linked to the concept of hybris or hubris.
Hubris meaning pride.
Yes, but a specific kind of pride. In classical Greek literature, hybris was the kind of arrogant overstepping of boundaries that always, without fail, drew punishment from the gods.
Like Icarus flying too close to the sun.
Right, the gods had their domain, mortals had theirs. If a mortal forgot their place and acted like a god, Nemesis, the goddess of retribution, would strike them down. The Jewish writers took this Greek idea of overstepping boundaries and applied it to the covenantal relationship with the Creator.
So they are taking the horizontal deception, a man lying to his neighbors about his wealth, and tilting it vertically.
Tilting it vertically, yeah.
It becomes a man lying to himself and to heaven about his own status in the universe.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. In the Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 5, verse 8, the text describes alazoneia as something that actively separates a person from God.
It separates a person from God. It creates a relational chasm.
Yes. The Theological Dictionary by Delling highlights Habakkuk 2.5, where the alazon is defined as the man who refuses to put his confidence in God.
That reframing changes how I view the entire concept. If the alazon is defined as the person who refuses to put their confidence in God, then the opposite of the alazon isn't necessarily a humble, quiet person.
No, it's not.
The opposite is a dependent person, a person who trusts the Creator. The alazon trusts only the illusion they have built around themselves. They put their confidence in their own vaporware.
To illustrate the sheer madness of this vertical rebellion, the sources bring up a specific historical example from the intertestamental period. 2 Maccabees 9.8. This is a text detailing the reign of Antiochus Epiphanes.
Okay, set the stage for us. Who was Antiochus?
He was the Hellenistic king who brutally persecuted the Jewish people and famously desecrated the temple in Jerusalem. The historical text explicitly calls Antiochus an alazon.
Why apply that specific word to a vicious dictator? There are plenty of words for tyrant or murderer.
Because of the specific nature of his delusion. The text says that in his superhuman conceit, Antiochus thought he could give orders to the waves of the sea.
Give orders to the waves of the sea, that is sheer madness.
Total madness.
It reminds me of the historical accounts of the Persian king Xerxes. When his engineers built a bridge of boats across the Hellespont, a storm came and destroyed it. Xerxes was so enraged that he ordered his soldiers to physically whip the ocean with lashes and brand the water with hot irons.
That's the exact same spirit.
You have a finite, flesh and blood human being standing on the shoreline yelling at the tide.
It is the ultimate picture of a finite creature forgetting its limits. That is why the Jewish scholars chose the word alazon.
I see the connection now.
The street hustler claims he has wealth he does not possess. Antiochus claims he has a divine nature he does not possess. It is an attempt to usurp the sovereign creator.
He's claiming sovereignty over nature.
Antiochus wasn't just bragging about his military might. He was claiming a status that belongs exclusively to God. He believed he could weigh the high mountains on his scales.
Wow.
This is the theological core of alazoneia in the biblical mindset. It is the imposter who has convinced himself that he is the king of the universe.
I'm looking at the notes regarding the book of Proverbs, and I think this confirms what we are discussing. The sources point out Proverbs 21.24, where the alazon is linked directly with another specific Greek term, the authades.
The authades translates to the insolent or presumptuous person.
The insolent person. That this connection suggests to me that the bragging, the loud talk, the swaggering on the stage, it is all just a symptom.
Like a cough is a symptom of a cold.
Right. The boasting is the fever. But the actual infection is a much deeper, much more dangerous presumption about one's place in the universe. The alazon assumes they are the center of reality.
They operate on the presumption that they are self-sufficient, autonomous, and answerable to no one. They believe they are the author of their own truth and the architect of their own destiny.
Having established this Old Testament context, the shift from the street hustler to the finite creature challenging the creator, I want to move the conversation to the New Testament.
Let's do it.
We have established the disease. Now I want to see how the apostles diagnose it in the early church. How does the Apostle Paul utilize this specific terminology?
Paul uses the noun form, alazon, in only 2 places in his letters, Romans 1.30 and 2 Timothy 3.2.
Only twice in the entire Pauline corpus.
Yes, just twice as a noun. But the structural placement of the word in these 2 passages is highly significant.
How did he place it?
In both Romans and 2 Timothy, Paul embeds alazon into highly arranged, systematic lists of severe ethical failures. These rhetorical devices are often referred to by scholars as vice lists.
I have read about these lists. The sources mention they show traces of careful, deliberate arrangement, sometimes containing 12 or 18 distinct terms in a specific sequence.
They are not random assortments of bad behavior thrown together haphazardly. They are carefully constructed catalogs of human ruin.
And where does our word fall in the catalog?
In both of these specific lists, Paul places alazon directly adjacent to 2 other specific words. Hyperephanos, which means the proud, and blasphemoi, which means blasphemers.
I am looking at these lists and I am honestly confused. I need you to explain this grouping because Paul groups the braggart, the guy claiming he has a better chariot than he really does, right next to the blasphemer.
It seems extreme.
That seems like a massive overreaction. Blasphemy is a cosmic crime. It is a direct verbal assault on the character and majesty of God. Boasting seems so trivial in comparison. Why is Paul elevating a social annoyance to a capital spiritual offense?
That is the tension that commentaries by Delling and Spick address. We have to strip away our modern, softened definition of a braggart.
We have to forget the golf guy at the barbecue.
Right. We have to view the word through the lens of Antiochus commanding the waves. In the context of Romans 1, Paul is describing the downward spiral of humanity. He is charting what happens when human beings actively suppress the truth about God.
So it's about suppression.
Spick notes that these individuals are not just vain people who think too highly of themselves in a social setting. They are people who go to the extreme excess of abolishing the Creator in their thoughts and in their lives.
Abolishing the Creator in their thoughts. That is a chilling phrase. What are the actual mechanics of abolishing God mentally?
It means you construct a worldview where God is entirely unnecessary. The grouping with blasphemers shows that the boast of the alazon is inherently blasphemous.
Because you're taking his place.
Because if you claim that you are the sole architect of your success, if you claim you are the absolute master of your fate, and if you believe you are the source of your own provision, you are actively robbing God of the glory, the credit, and the dependence he's owed by right of creation.
Wow.
You are claiming divine attributes for yourself. That is blasphemy in action, even if you never utter a single curse word against heaven.
You are stealing the sovereignty of God and pasting it onto your own resume.
That's a great way to put it.
And what about the second list in 2 Timothy 3?
In 2 Timothy, Paul is giving a prophetic warning about the ethical degradation of humanity in the last days. He writes, "For there will be people who are lovers of themselves, lovers of money, braggarts."
So it's tied to loving self.
Here, the Alazōn attitude is a specific defining marker of an inverted reality. The fundamental design of humanity is to be lovers of God. But Paul warns of a time when humanity becomes completely turned inward, becoming lovers of themselves.
An inward collapse.
The alazon is the ultimate expression of that inward collapse. They love the illusion of their own greatness more than they love the God who gave them breath.
So Paul gives us this massive cosmic theological framework for the word. He places it in the context of human depravity and the total inward collapse of society.
Yes.
But then we have the book of James. And James, as he consistently does in his epistle, gives us a highly relatable, everyday, street-level case study of this attitude in action. He brings the high theology down to the marketplace.
James grounds the concept in economic reality. We see this in James chapter 4, verses 15 and 16.
Let me read the scenario drawn from our sources. James is addressing business travelers' motions operating in the ancient Mediterranean trade routes.
These were the traveling salesmen of the ancient world.
These individuals are boasting about their strategic plans. They say, today or tomorrow we will go to this or that city, spend a year there, carry on business, and make a profit.
Sounds pretty standard.
Right. And James looks at this business plan, this quarterly forecast, and he attacks it. He calls it vainglory. He says it is iniquitous. He uses the plural form of our word alazoneia.
He doesn't hold back.
Wait, I have to stop here and push back on James. This just sounds like a responsible business strategy. Any financial advisor today would tell you to set a goal, allocate resources, project the margin, and execute. Why is James coming down so incredibly hard on basic financial forecasting?
The lexical entries dissect the nature of this specific vice brilliantly. James is not attacking commerce itself.
So what is he attacking?
He is attacking the theological assumption beneath the business plan. Look at how these merchants are described by the commentators. They consider themselves rich in intelligence. They pride themselves on their savoir-faire, their situational adaptability, and their shrewdness.
They think they're the smartest guys in the room.
They do. They are proud of the importance of their enterprise, their projected profits, and they are multiplying fine projects for the future.
They sound like every CEO giving an earnings call.
Yeah, but James identifies the theological core issue, which the dictionaries define as ignorance of creaturely limitations.
Ignorance of creaturely limitations, meaning they have forgotten what they are.
Yes. The alazoneia in this context is acting as if the merchant holds absolute disposal over the future.
Absolute disposal.
These business people are speaking and planning with an air of complete certainty. They are stating what they will do tomorrow and next year, completely ignoring the fundamental reality that the future is strictly under the control of God's sovereign will.
They're leaving God out of the equation entirely.
James actually points out in verse 14 that they do not even know what will happen tomorrow. He says their life is just a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes.
A mist, a vapor. That is the definition of creaturely limitation. You cannot grasp a mist. You cannot build a solid foundation on a vapor.
To plan for the future, while actively ignoring the God who holds the future, is a form of practical atheism. It is the imposter syndrome of the alazon manifesting in a spreadsheet. They are selling themselves the illusion of control.
I think we need to bring this right into your living room for you listening right now. We look at these ancient merchants and judge them, but we do the exact same thing with our technology and our wealth.
Oh, absolutely do.
We use our 401ks, our life insurance policies, and our Google calendars to build a buffer against mortality. We use these tools to convince ourselves that we have neutralized the unknown.
We use logistics to hide our vulnerability.
Let me offer an analogy for you. The attitude James is condemning is like being given a daily planner. You sit down and you write out your entire life plan. You write out your career trajectory, your financial milestones, your 5-year plan, and your specific retirement date.
And you fill up every page.
And you write it all in thick, black, permanent marker. Then, as an afterthought, you sign God's name to the bottom of the page and you hand it to him, demanding that he execute your brilliant strategy.
That is the essence of presumption. You have assumed the role of the sovereign and relegated God to the role of an administrative assistant.
Whereas the biblical model, the absolute opposite of alazoneia, is writing your plans in pencil.
In pencil.
You still plan, you still strategize, but you humbly submit those plans to his sovereign calendar. You recognize that he holds the eraser. You say, as James advises, if it is the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that.
Spick's commentary points out that to pride oneself on one's own abilities in this manner is, religiously speaking, a severe sin.
It's not just a faux pas.
It is not just a failure of humility or a lack of manners. It is a fundamental failure to recognize reality. The objective reality is that you are a created being, utterly dependent on the Creator for your next breath, let alone your profit margin 12 months from now in a distant city.
So claiming control over time and money and our future schedules is a massive failure to recognize our dependency. But the Apostle John takes this concept to its absolute chilling zenith in his first epistle.
He really does.
We have moved from the stage comedy to the business ledger, and now John takes us to the structure of the cosmos.
1 John 2.16. This is perhaps the most devastating use of the concept in the entire New Testament. John unpacks the mechanics of what he calls all that is in the world.
He's diagnosing the whole system.
He's describing the operating system of fallen humanity.
The phrase he uses is high alazoneia to bu, which is usually translated into English as the boastful pride of life.
Let us focus on a highly specific detail from the Spick entry regarding this verse.
Okay.
John gives a triad, a list of 3 specific things that characterize the fallen world system. He lists the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and it concludes with this phrase, the boastful pride of life.
Okay, flesh, eyes, and pride of life.
Spick asks a brilliant analytical question. Why didn't John say the lust for money or the lust for riches as his third item?
That is a great question, because greed seems to fit perfectly with the flesh and the eyes. It is the classic trio of human temptation: sex, power, and money. Why does John break the pattern and use this complex phrase about pride and life?
Because John has his sights set on a much more severe vice than the ostentation of the wealthy or the arrogance of the rich toward the poor. Greed is a sin of appetite. Alazoneia is a sin of status.
So what could possibly be worse than systemic material greed? Based on the text and the lexicons, I would suggest that the worst possible condition is the attitude of what the commentary calls the cosmic man.
The cosmic man.
It is the delusion of absolute self-sufficiency.
I agree entirely. The boastful pride of life describes a person who fundamentally decides and directs the course of their entire life without taking God into account at any point.
They write him out of the script.
They have conceptually replaced the Creator with themselves at the center of their personal cosmos.
They are the sun, and everything else in their life, their family, their career, and even their concept of God, is just meant to orbit around their desires and plans.
This attitude is the exact opposite of the absolute duty of a created being.
Which is what?
The fundamental duty of a creature is worship. It is devout service. It is the constant, joyful acknowledgement of dependence on the one who sustains all things.
And the alazon refuses to do that.
The alazon replaces worship with self-mastery. It is creaturely pride attempting to master its own existence. It is the ultimate imposter act.
They are acting out a play where they pretend to be God.
They are. The dictionary states that this sufficiency is something altogether different from the classical profane alazoneia.
It evolved.
It evolved dramatically. It started as a street vendor tricking a villager out of a few coins with fake medicine, and it has metastasized into a human soul trying to trick heaven out of its sovereignty.
So let us synthesize how far we have come on this deep dive into these ancient sources. The word alazon started in the dust of the ancient Mediterranean roads.
As a wanderer.
It described a vagabond who lacked accountability. It described a street vendor selling fake medicine to desperate people. It described a swaggering soldier pretending to be brave on a wooden stage. It was a societal annoyance.
It was an imposter breaking the social trust of the community.
Right. But as the biblical writers adopted the term, pushing it through the Septuagint and into the New Testament epistles, they pulled back the veil on this behavior.
They exposed the root.
The apostles reveal that the alazon is not just a loudmouth with a fragile ego. The New Testament reveals a human being who is selling themselves the fake medicine of total autonomy.
Selling it to themselves.
They are an imposter whose self-absorbed conceit makes them entirely blind to their absolute breath-by-breath dependence on their creator.
They abolish God in their thoughts because recognizing the sovereign God requires admitting their own terrifying vulnerability as a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes.
Wrapping up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over. I want you to build on the tension we have tracked in these sources and applied it to the water we swim in today.
It's highly relevant today.
Think about the modern digital economy. We live in an era, an economic and social system that constantly, relentlessly demands that we sell ourselves.
Constantly.
We are told by every algorithm and every career counselor to build our personal brands. We are instructed to project an image of total competence, to curate our lives for an online audience, and to act as the sole masters of our destiny.
The modern infrastructure of social media and self-promotion is practically built on the mechanics of alazoneia. We were incentivized to arouse the expectation of goods which are not in fact there.
Precisely. If the ancient world viewed the alazon as a dangerous imposter inviting divine judgment, a finite creature madly yelling at the waves, how should we evaluate the daily habits of our modern culture?
It's a sobering thought.
A culture which seemingly trains us, rewards us, and monetizes our ability to be the very thing the apostles warned against. It makes you wonder if our entire digital landscape is just an endless parade of swaggering soldiers pretending we hold the pen that writes the future, while ignoring the God who holds our next breath. Thank you for joining the conversation today. We will talk to you next time.